Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more heartwarming and inspiring stories. The crisp autumn air carried the laughter of children through the city park. Golden leaves crunched under tiny sneakers as kids ran across the playground, their carefree energy filling the space with life. Near the swings, a little boy, no older than 8, stood staring up at a tall man in an expensive suit. His big brown eyes were filled with a mix of curiosity and something deeper, something that made the man pause. "Hey, sir," the boy said, his voice small but steady. "I think your son saved my life." The billionaire CEO, Nicholas Carter, had been on his way out of the park, his mind occupied with unread emails and an upcoming investor meeting. But the boy's words made him stop cold. He turned, his sharp blue eyes narrowing slightly as he studied the child. A stranger's kid, recognizing him wasn't unusual. His face often appeared on magazine covers and business news. But this was different. "My son," Nicholas echoed, his voice controlled. But inside, something twisted. The boy nodded eagerly. "Yeah, I never met him, but I know he did." Nicholas felt a strange chill despite the warmth of the late afternoon sun. His heart, usually armored against the world, beat a little harder. It had been years since he'd heard anyone mention his son. James had been gone for so long. Too long. The boy, messy hair, bright eyes, wearing a slightly oversized hoodie, grinned up at him, completely unaware of the storm he had just stirred inside Nicholas. "My name's Ryan," he said, sticking out his small hand. Nicholas hesitated before shaking it, the boy's grip surprisingly firm for someone so young. "Nicholas Carter," he responded automatically, though he knew Ryan already recognized him. "I know," Ryan said matter-of-factly. "You're the richest guy in the city." Nicholas gave a short, dry chuckle. "Something like that." Ryan shifted on his feet, looking down for a moment, then back up, his expression more serious. "Now, can I tell you a story?" Nicholas exhaled, glancing at his watch. He had exactly 7 minutes before his driver arrived. 7 minutes before he had to return to a world of contracts, negotiations, and numbers. 7 minutes before he could push aside whatever this strange moment was. But something in Ryan's face, earnest, expectant, made him nod. "Go ahead." Ryan's eyes lit up, and he launched into his story. "A long time ago. Well, not that long, just a couple of years. I got really, really sick. My mum said it was something called heart failure. It made me super tired all the time. I couldn't run like the other kids. I couldn't even walk too much without feeling like I needed to take a nap." He frowned. "And I love running." Nicholas felt an odd tightness in his chest. He didn't want to hear this story. Not because it wasn't important, but because, deep down, something told him he already knew where it was going. Ryan continued. "Mum said I needed a new heart, but those are hard to find. And even when they do find one, it has to be perfect for you, or it won't work. So, we waited and waited. I was in the hospital a lot. I missed my birthday. I missed Christmas. Mum tried to be happy, but I could tell she was scared." Nicholas felt his hands clench slightly. He didn't know this boy, but he could see the scene so clearly. A mother sitting by a hospital bed, forcing a smile for her child while her heart was breaking inside. Ryan took a deep breath. Then one day, the doctor came in and said they found one. A heart. He placed his small hand over his chest. A really good one. The world around Nicholas seemed to fade, the noise of the park becoming distant. His pulse pounded in his ears. Ryan looked up at him, unaware of the way Nicholas's entire world had just shifted. "It saved me," the boy said simply. And I don't know who it came from. They don't tell you that stuff. But he tilted his head. I heard something once. My mom was talking to a nurse. She didn't know I was listening. The nurse said the heart came from a boy. A really brave boy. Nicholas's throat felt tight. Ryan hesitated, then added, his name was James. The name sliced through Nicholas like a blade. He barely heard the rest of what Ryan was saying. Something about how he always wondered about the boy who had given him this second chance. How he wanted to say thank you. How he wished he could meet him just once. Nicholas couldn't breathe. His son. His little James. Memories crashed over him. James's laugh as he played in the backyard. The way he always ran ahead, but turned back to make sure his dad was still close. The late-night bedtime stories. The whispered, I love you, Dad, right before falling asleep, and then the hospital, the phone call, the unbearable silence that followed. James had been taken from him too soon, but even in death, he had saved someone. A little boy who now stood before Nicholas, alive, heart beating strong. Ryan smiled up at him, unaware of the war raging inside Nicholas. So, yeah, he said. I think your son saved my life. Nicholas swallowed, forcing himself to find his voice. He did, he said, his words barely above a whisper. Ryan's face lit up. I knew it, he said excitedly. I always felt like I had a guardian, angel or something, someone looking out for me. Nicholas looked away for a moment, composing himself. He had spent years building walls, focusing on business, drowning in work to avoid thinking about what he had lost. And yet, here stood the proof that his son's legacy had lived on, not in money, not in power, but in the life of a little boy who had no idea just how much he had changed everything in a single conversation. Ryan rocked back on his heels. Hey, do you want to meet my mom? She's right over there. He pointed toward a woman sitting on a bench, watching them with quiet curiosity. Nicholas hesitated. He had meetings, obligations, people waiting, but for the first time in years, none of it felt important. He took a deep breath, then nodded. Yeah, Ryan, he said. I'd like that. And with that, the billionaire CEO followed the little boy across the park toward a meeting that would change all of their lives forever. Nicholas followed Ryan across the park, each step feeling heavier than the last. His mind raced, emotions tangled in ways he hadn't allowed in years. The memory of his son, James, was something he had kept locked away, buried under layers of work, deals, and distractions. And yet, in a single moment, this little boy had pulled it all back to the surface. As they approached the bench, Ryan waved eagerly. Mom, this is Mr. Carter. The woman sitting there looked up, her expression shifting from curiosity to something more guarded. She was young, probably in her early 30s, with tired eyes that spoke of long nights and endless worries. Despite that, there was a warmth in her face, a quiet strength that reminded Nicholas of someone he had once known. She stood, smoothing her hands over her jeans. Nicholas Carter, she said, as if testing the name on her tongue. I wasn't expecting to meet you today. Nicholas nodded, studying her. Neither was I. Ryan, completely unaware of the weight of the moment, plopped down on the bench between them. Mom, I told him. About the heart, about James. He grinned proudly. And I was right. His mother's face softened as she looked at him. Then, back at Nicholas. I didn't know if we'd ever get to meet the donor's family, she said carefully. The hospital keeps everything anonymous. Nicholas's throat felt tight. He didn't know how to respond. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to feel. Ryan, oblivious to the tension, swung his legs back and forth. Mom, Did you know he's, like, super rich? He said, as if sharing a secret. Like, the richest guy ever. His mother sighed, shaking her head with an amused smile. Yes, Ryan, I know who he is. Nicholas almost smiled. The boy was refreshingly direct. No filter, no hesitation. He had James's spirit, fearless and full of life. Finally, Nicholas found his voice. I didn't know, until today, he admitted. I didn't know where James's heart had gone. Her expression softened. I can't imagine what that must be like for you. Nicholas exhaled, running a hand over his face. It's a lot. There was a silence between them. Not uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken emotions. Then, Ryan perked up. Oh, Mom, can I show him? He turned to Nicholas, eyes bright with excitement. I have something cool to show you. Before anyone could respond, he was already digging into his backpack. He pulled out a small worn notebook and flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for. Then, he held it up proudly. Nicholas leaned in. It was a drawing, messy, colorful, clearly done by a child's hand. But what struck him wasn't the artwork itself, but what it showed. A boy standing with his arms outstretched, surrounded by light. In his chest, a glowing heart. Above him, a name written in shaky letters. James. Nicholas swallowed hard. I never knew what he looked like, Ryan said softly. But sometimes, I feel like I do. Like he's here. Like he's been watching out for me. He tapped the drawing. So, I drew him how I imagined. Nicholas's heart clenched. He had spent years convincing himself that James was gone, that holding on to memories wouldn't change anything. And yet, here was proof that his son's presence still lingered in ways he had never expected. Ryan's mother placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Ryan has always felt connected to the donor, she explained. We never knew his name, but he always called him his guardian angel. Nicholas looked at Ryan, then at the drawing, then back at Ryan's mother. What's your name? He asked, realizing he hadn't even asked until now. Anna, she said. Anna. The name suited her. Strong, simple. Nicholas nodded slowly, taking it all in. You've raised a good kid. Anna smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I try. Ryan, still caught up in his excitement, tugged at Nicholas's sleeve. Hey, can I ask you something? Nicholas blinked, refocusing. Of course. Ryan hesitated, then said, Did James like rockets? The question was so unexpected that Nicholas almost laughed. Yeah, he said, a real smile tugging at his lips for the first time that day. He loved them. He wanted to be an astronaut. Ryan's face lit up. Me too. I build rockets all the time. Not real ones yet, but I will someday. He looked up at Nicholas with pure enthusiasm. Maybe you could help me. Nicholas opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. Could he? After everything, was he even capable of stepping into this world that had already changed him so much in just a few minutes? Anna, sensing his hesitation, placed a hand on Ryan's back. Ryan, Mr. Carter has a very busy life. Ryan frowned. Oh, right. He looked down, clearly disappointed, but then perked up again. Maybe just once. Just one rocket. Nicholas hesitated, looking at the boy, then at Anna. The logical part of his mind told him to walk away, to keep his distance. But another part, one that he had ignored for too long, was telling him something different. James had given Ryan his heart. Maybe it was time Nicholas did too. He took a slow breath. One rocket, he said. For now. Ryan beamed. Awesome. Anna looked at Nicholas. something unreadable in her expression. "Are you sure?" "No," Nicholas admitted, "but I think I want to be." Anna nodded, understanding more than she let on. And just like that, something shifted. Nicholas had spent years running from his past, drowning himself in work, in distractions, in anything that kept him from feeling the pain of losing James. But in one afternoon, a little boy with bright eyes and an unstoppable spirit had cracked something open inside him. He wasn't sure where this road would lead. He didn't know if he was ready to walk it, but for the first time in a long time, he was willing to try. As the days passed, Nicholas found himself thinking about Ryan and Anna more than he expected. He had spent years building walls around his heart, convincing himself that keeping busy was the best way to move forward. But now, there was a little boy who carried a part of James inside him. A boy who looked at him with hope, excitement, and a kind of innocence Nicholas hadn't seen in a long time. A week later, Nicholas found himself outside Anna and Ryan's apartment. It was a modest building, nothing like the luxury he was used to, but it had warmth. He hesitated before knocking, unsure if he was making the right decision. But when Ryan swung open the door with an excited grin, all doubt faded. "You came," Ryan cheered, already pulling Nicholas inside. Anna appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, surprised but not unwelcoming. "I wasn't sure if we'd see you again." Nicholas nodded. "Me neither." Ryan led him to a small table covered in blueprints, sketches, and half-assembled models. "Okay, so I was thinking," Ryan said excitedly, "we should build a big one, a real one, not just a toy." Nicholas chuckled, sitting down. "That might take some time." "I don't mind," Ryan said, grinning. "You're busy, I know, but you can come whenever you want." Nicholas looked at Anna, silently, asking if she was okay with this. She gave a small nod, her expression unreadable, and so it became a routine. Nicholas found himself visiting often, helping Ryan with his projects, sharing stories about James, and without realizing it, becoming part of their lives. For the first time in years, he felt something other than emptiness. But life had a way of reminding people that happiness was fragile. One evening, Nicholas received a call from Anna. Her voice was tense. "It's Ryan. He collapsed at school. We're at the hospital." Nicholas felt his chest tighten. "I'm on my way." By the time he arrived, Anna was pacing outside Ryan's hospital room. She looked up, relief and worry battling in her eyes. "They said his heart is struggling. They don't know if—" Her voice broke, and she shook her head. "He might need another surgery." Nicholas swallowed hard. "Can I see him?" Anna nodded. Inside the room, Ryan looked small against the white hospital sheets. His usual energy was gone, but when he saw Nicholas, he managed a weak smile. "Hey, Mr. Carter." Nicholas sat beside him. "Hey, buddy." Ryan took a slow breath. "I guess my rocket's gonna have to wait, huh?" Nicholas forced a smile. "Just for a little while." Ryan hesitated, then looked up at him with serious eyes. "I'm scared." Nicholas felt something break inside him. He reached for Ryan's hand, holding it firmly. "I know, but you're strong. You've got James's heart, remember?" Ryan smiled faintly. "Yeah." The hours passed slowly, filled with uncertainty. Nicholas stayed with Anna, both of them waiting for updates, both knowing the fear of possibly losing someone they loved. Finally, a doctor approached. "We're stabilizing him for now, but he will need another procedure. It's risky, but it's his best chance." Anna's hands trembled, and Nicholas instinctively reached out, steadying her. "We do whatever it takes," she said. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. That night, Nicholas sat beside Ryan, watching him sleep. His mind drifted to James, to all the times he had sat in a hospital room, just like this one, The pain was different now. It wasn't just grief. It was fear, but also hope. When the morning came, Ryan was wheeled into surgery. The waiting was unbearable. Nicholas and Anna sat in silence, every passing minute stretching endlessly. Then, hours later, the doctor returned. The surgery went well. He's going to be okay. Anna let out a sob of relief, covering her face with her hands. Nicholas felt something deep inside him loosen, something he hadn't even realized he'd been holding. Days later, when Ryan finally woke up, the first thing he said was, "Did we miss the rocket launch?" Nicholas laughed, shaking his head. "No, buddy, we didn't miss anything." Anna squeezed Ryan's hand. "You just focus on getting better." As the weeks passed, Ryan grew stronger. Nicholas continued to visit, and something unspoken shifted between him and Anna. There was no grand declaration, no sudden realization, just a quiet understanding that their lives had intertwined in a way neither had expected. One evening, they sat in the park, Ryan between them, staring at the sky. Nicholas finally spoke. "I spent years running from James's memory. I thought forgetting would make it easier." He looked at Ryan. "But you brought him back in a way I never imagined." Ryan grinned. "So, does that mean we can finally build that big rocket?" Nicholas chuckled, ruffling Ryan's hair. "Yeah, let's build a big one." Anna smiled, watching them. "I think James would have liked that." Nicholas looked at the stars, then back at them. He had spent his life chasing success, thinking it would fill the void. But in the end, it wasn't money or power that brought him peace. It was a little boy with James's heart, and a woman who reminded him that sometimes the best things in life weren't planned. And for the first time in a long time, Nicholas Carter knew exactly where he belonged.